quickly trying to pull up my agenda, which I have right here.
Marcia, Linda Escobedo is trying to find the meeting and get in, so you might see her in the waiting room.
Okay, I'm also recording, just in case we need that record.
Okay. So the first thing that we need to talk about is the RFQ for the landscape architecture services. Liz, do you want to sort of brief the group on where we are with that process and what we've been able to do?
Sure, and I think I sent it to everyone in the group, right?
Yeah.
So when it's so it's out and posted, and it's actually on the town website also now. So it's you know, it's a formal RFQ. It's not an RFP, so it's a request for quotes. It really talks about so it's available now, and I think the end date is the April 5th.
Yep.
So if you knew people who are in this line of work who might be interested in this, please direct them to this. Either send them directly to that or point them to myself or point them to the town website. I think that, you know, in the end, I think that the group, and this would be someone, I think probably you're going to assign someone tonight who would work with the CHDC to select the respondent to award the contract to. The CHDC will be the contracting entity, so they'll be part of that, Peter Lowett. And so quickly, the scope is to review the existing information and have an initial meeting with the committee, draft 3 design concepts for public review, attend and present at a public input session in early June, and then a final presentation in September. So that was the idea, to sort of work with the group and have a what do you think to the public? Here's like 3 ideas, and then to refine those over the summertime. Gather input from other boards and committees, the West Concord Junction Cultural District, the West Concord Advisory Committee, and the Historic Commission, most specifically. Refine the design concept over the summer with the task force, including, you know, pathway grading, invasive species management, and some other details, and then preparation of a master plan report with multiple revisions and reviews, and attending the task force meetings, currently monthly. So it was anticipated that the work would commence immediately and is planned to be substantially complete by the fall. So it's kind of a now project, right? So start now, busy over the summer, tailor off, maybe some residual work in the fall. And that's the idea.
We had identified a couple of people, one of whom was Joan Ferguson. Krista reached out to her and found out that Joan is now retired, so we can't, so she doesn't want to be solicited as part of this. But were there any other names that any of you know for landscape architects that?
Did I mention Natalie DeNormandy and Sago Design to you? I
don't remember that name.
It might have been one of those like 3 a.m. things where I was like, oh, I have to tell Carlene about Natalie. So Natalie is a good friend, and she's got her own landscape design shop, but she's a Harvard Graduate School of Design graduate, and she's done some really neat projects, really invested in working with native plants and edible landscapes and things like that. So I will definitely send it to her.
That would be great. Is she local?
And if you want to just send
Wayland
to me with what her name is and the name of her firm too.
Sure.
That's good. Thank you. I think it was like Brooke Cash. Is that who someone did you send to her, Carlene?
No, I didn't send to Brooke Cash yet. We had talked about that, but I haven't sent it to Brooke, but I can. Brooke, do you all know Brooke? She was a former chair of the planning board. Sue, I think you would know her if you saw her.
Oh, that Brooke. Oh, okay.
Right. She's terrific. She's the former chair of I asked her actually to be on this committee like 2 years ago, and she said she just had too much on her plate then. But that, of course, was a volunteer request and not a paid request. Yep. So she knows exactly what this committee is and what we'll be doing. And she's, I think, a really good target for this.
And you had also mentioned Kim Ahern.
I don't know her. Krista,
I don't know her.
Who mentioned her?
I do. I know her. And she's in Littleton. She's done a lot of work for various developers around town. pretty successfully when she is able to complete a project. Not all the projects that she gets to work on are successful, but I've worked with her on an outside project. So that would give us at least 3 quotes, which would be really useful.
Do you want to send it to her or send me her contact information and I
can
can
do that.
contact her?
I can do
Yeah,
that.
great.
Does the town not have a list of usual suspects for this sort of thing?
No, this is a medium scale project. It's kind of on the small side, and we don't have a go-to list. Usually we might go through a request for proposals, which is usually a higher, a longer term project process and project. But where we have a limited scope and a limited project, it's easier to do something along the request for quote process.
And one more from Marcia, maybe you know who they are. I can't remember the name, but they're in the basement level of in Monument Square, where the same building where On the Mat Yoga is, next to the townhouse. And they're an architecture and landscape architecture firm. If you don't know, I can find out. Okay, but they've also done kind of similar scale projects and very like into keeping the character of the site. And all right, I'll figure that out.
Okay. So we'll get those, because that's due April 5th, which is, not too far away. It's a week in 4 or 5 days. So, so we'll have to move real quickly. So I'll send your RFQ to Brooke tonight, Liz.
Great.
Sorry if I had already said I would do that. I didn't realize.
Not a problem.
And then who is going to send it out to Kim Ahern? Is that?
Marcia's going to send me her
Okay.
contact and I'll do that.
Okay. And then Krista, you're going to send it to Natalie. Great. And then Krista, you're also going to find out the name of this group in Monument Square.
And I'll give Natalie's info to Liz too.
Yeah. Okay. That's terrific. Good. So those are good prospects. Isn't there, Krista, didn't you say there was a landscape architecture firm right there on Winthrop Street, at the end of Winthrop Street?
Marcia,
This guy Tim, what's his name? Tim, he used to be in this building. He's an architect. I didn't know he's in that building. But I didn't know if he's a landscape architect.
Okay.
It's Lemon Brook, and it's Brooke White and Cash works for them.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right, great. Okay, so let me, sorry, I called up the agenda and now it's fled my desktop. Here it is. Oh, the next thing on the agenda I was going to have ready for you all, but I just didn't get to it. It's an introductory letter from the task force to interested parties, committees, and boards. We really need to get that out. I just haven't done it yet. I can do it this weekend. If someone else wants to take that task, I'm happy to hand it over, but I can do it this weekend. I just haven't been able to. But we just need a formal letter that tells people who we are, what we're doing, that we want them to participate. We want to hear their thoughts and what the plan is.
do we, the committee, need to vote on it? Because we could just delegate somebody to go do it, or else we have to either wait a month or have a supplemental meeting, neither of which are the end of the world.
Can I just write it, send it out, see if there's any edits or wordsmithing, and then send it out to the group? Is that all right? Right. I don't know if we have to group wordsmith it.
Well, we can't group wordsmith it unless we have.
I meant at the next meeting.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah, but since it's now I'm trying to remember what the deal is on this. I think if you send it to us all individually and then we send back our comments, but don't get to see anybody else's comments. Now I've forgotten. Is that?
That's what I usually do. Does that
Yeah.
sound right, Marcia?
That's right. What you would need though is an authorization to send the letter on behalf of the task force.
Okay.
I make a motion that Carleen be authorized to write and send a letter to other committees, to relevant other committees in Concord about our upcoming work.
Second.
All in favor, Carleen, I, Carleen Hempel, I.
Krista Collins, aye.
Harry Bartlett, I.
Bob Hartman, aye.
Sue Felshen, aye.
That's unanimous. That.
Carleen, one question about that. Did you have on your list of other boards and committees, there's like a native pollinator? There's like
No.
a native,
No, and I'm so glad you're mentioning that because I think that's a critical constituency here.
um,
That bee pollinator group, right?
yeah.
Yeah. I don't know their name, but that's my next committee after this
Okay.
one, so. No, it's the Historical Commission, the WCAC, the Arts Commission,
NRC.
the NRC, right, the NRC, the business, the West Concord, I think they just call themselves the West Concord Business Group
Yeah.
that Margot and Helen both run. What about
WCAC.
ORS? Yeah, the WCAC.
Oh yeah, we should send it to ORS.
Okay. I hadn't thought of ORS before. Yep, WCAC, absolutely.
So, you know, there's also a website at the town website that you can reference in the letter that people can look at.
Okay.
Oh, Bruce Fairman Rail Trail Committee.
Yep, and then the Green Thumbs, I think, because we might be asking them for something along the line, right? Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. So the Native.
Maureen, you're gonna have to send me this list because I missed some members.
Yes, I'm just gonna say to you now, just in case, the Native Pollinator Group, which I've got to get the name of, the Historical Commission, the NRC, ORS, WCAC, West Concord Junction.
Wait, what was the one before WCAC?
ORS, it's the.
Oh, ORS.
The West Concord the West Concord Junction Cultural District Commission. I think I said an extra word there. The Green Thumbs and the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail.
Okay, it was ORS I had missed.
Oh, and the West Concord Business Group.
Yeah, got them. Thanks.
So, oh, one more. Is there any sort of native plant group around, Krista? Like a group that's specifically interested in
Well-
native plants and,
So, well, there's the Metrowest Conservation Alliance, which has a native pollinator task force, and I think they're kind of they are working on a couple of their own pollinator gardens and interested in kind of like promoting pollinator pathway. So while they wouldn't like do any work on this site per se, they would be interested in like including it as part of their overall vision.
that would be great. So I just wrote down Metro West Conservation Alliance, but maybe you can help me over the weekend if I need a better reference.
Yeah, in fact, you can just make me the contact for that because it's
Okay.
kind of, it's administered by Sudbury Valley trustees. So
Okay,
I can get it to the right people.
that's great. And then the other one that I just remembered is, and I know this from my another committee work, is the Emerson umbrella. They have that environment, they used to be called Muscataquid, but they have that sort of environment group that looks at where to put art installments and outside spaces.
Mhm.
Nancy Lippy used to administer that. She's left, and there's a new one named, I think, Caroline. Yeah, Nancy
Caroline.
moved like out of state, but there's
Oh,
a new
no.
one named Caroline Portman or something like that.
That's great.
And I think that's a good one to notify too.
Two more, the Fowler Library and the Commission on Disabilities.
Oh, that's a really good suggestion, Marcia. I'm embarrassed to say I probably wouldn't have thought to include that, and I should. That should be a default. In Fowler Library. Okay, we have a good list.
There's also the Suasco SISMA, which is the Sudbury Aspet Concord Cooperative Invasive Species Management area group. We've done some work for.
That's right. And actually the same person coordinates, my coworker, Kristen, coordinates SISMA and the MCA. So,
I don't know if they're really active. It looks like they're anymore, but I don't know. Do you know, Krista?
yeah, they still meet regularly. And to be perfectly honest, it's like one of those things I kind of tune out. I don't have enough space in my brain for like all that too.
Even the number of initials.
Yes, a lot of-
That's the longest document. We did a website for them and it's down though. They just have like a Word doc up now for them.
Oh, okay,
Okay.
There's one more, it's not necessarily a committee, but there's one more entity that you're gonna need to coordinate with, and that's the Department of Corrections.
Oh, yeah.
And I can funnel something through for that.
Marcia, should that be a different letter? than the-
Probably, but I'd like to get some outreach going and get that conversation started sooner rather than later. Just
How
let me
will
know.
what will that look like? Do you have any sort of point of reference of what our relationship will be with them?
Well, there is a person who's responsible for facilities, and I would start with him. And just to let him know what work will be going on, and then he will reach out. The superintendents at that prison turn over fairly frequently, so we might start with one and end up with another or two. But if we work through this facilities organizer, I think that would be the best way to go.
And this is, and just forgive my ignorance, because I've actually never worked with MCI at all. Is this sort of a courtesy sort of thing, or will they have any sort of right of refusal over what we are planning?
They might request some input on what is planned. You know, they might have some limitations. I don't know what limitations were imposed on the Concord Housing Development Corporation. I know that there were height limitations. There's some issues of screening and so forth. So I think we want to work in concert rather than set something up that could be problematic.
Yeah. Okay. That's really.
I think
good.
we've really talked also about, that cart path in the back.
Right. Right.
So, that's without something, people would just kind of walk onto the DOC property. Right. So there'll be some concern over that, and there'll be some plan to manage that specifically, aside
Right.
from the general things that Marcia's talking about.
Right. the
And
gate.
I'm not aware of, Marcia, where any of that agreement with the CHDC, where that actually is.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know either, but it might be with the deed. It might be in the transfer of the land.
Hmm.
I haven't read all the documentation.
Yeah, I have.
But we can assume there would be something out there to find, Liz, that it would have already been established.
I
so-
will look, we will look to see what's what.
Okay. Okay.
You don't have to.
And some of that has to do with the residential portion versus this portion of the project. But I'm sorry, Sue.
We don't need to notify police or fire in any way, do we, to get their blessing on their ability to provide emergency services or something?
I think we'll want to do just a staff review to bring everybody up to speed. That's something that we do with all projects. And so it would just be an opportunity. When any project goes through, any development project goes through the town, there's usually a staff review session, and that involves police, fire, engineering, natural resources, building inspections, health, planning, light plant. They won't be interested, but just to be aware of what's going on and
Okay.
keep everyone informed.
Okay. Well, that's a really good list. This is just a great list anyway. I'm glad to it's just good to brainstorm this list, I think, and I'm happy to have done that. It would be very useful for this and other projects, I think. If anyone has any other ideas of groups that sort of pop in, just let me know, and when I send it out to you, I'll make a list of these, and you can take a look and see if anything's missing. Okay, I think we're all. Oh, does anybody have any questions about or any sort of? You just want to trust me for what to put in the letter, and then you can wordsmith it. Yes. Okay. So the next agenda item is discussion of how to complete the engineering base. I have basement document, but
I was wondering, was that supposed to be base?
Baseline. I think you meant baseline.
Baseline, yes, okay.
sorry
Oh,
about that.
does that mean the CR baseline? Or,
Yeah, I
or base map?
no baseline. The baseline. I'm sorry, the baseline documentation report to accompany the CR, right, exactly that.
Okay,
You know, the Mass Audubon specifications.
yeah,
I thought how to start with that is maybe to meet with the, we met with Bill Murray, the not the actor, but the Places architect who we have. And so we went through the plan, which I think that you all have, right? The that marks off the trees and various pieces. He's making some minor changes to that. But to take that plan and meet with Delia and talk about the baseline documentation report to see specifically what we need. There are different options for getting aerial photos with like drones in this. And before we kind of like march down some path, let's just to understand the deliverable a little bit more. So I thought kind of an introductory meeting with Delia and Bill Murray and maybe someone from the committee here can help us and Marcia, help us kind of figure out the next steps for the baseline documentation report.
I nominate Krista to be that person. I'm happy to attend, but I think Krista is the most expert in the room for that. Is that
Great,
okay,
thank you,
Krista?
Krista. How does that sound for a next step? Does that sound like a logical step?
yeah. I was gonna say, like, could we talk about the conservation restriction at the same time? But I think that would probably be premature. Like, I think we still have to figure out a lot more before we start talking about kind of what the reserved rights in the CR are.
Okay,
I mean,
hold on.
beyond the standard ones.
I want to interrupt for the sake of the minutes. It was the engineering baseline documentation report, something CR, what?
Hearing. Just take out engineering, just the baseline documentation report that accompanies the conservation restriction.
That accompanies, thank you.
My sense is this is a sort of a really complete, thorough document? Is this a heavy lift getting this document off?
It's a lot of just putting different pieces together, and it can't be completed until the CR is almost ready to record. So you can kind of be amassing the various parts as you go, but it has to be like in basically. So what it is it's the document that the person who monitors the CR, they take out into the field with them each year to make sure that the terms of the CR are being upheld. So it has to have like photo points from all the corners. So you can go back and see if anything has changed from year to year. So those photos should be taken as close to the time of recording the CR as possible. I mean, you can take early pictures and then you can go back and take more later, but.
We take those photos?
Sorry, what?
Are we going to be taking those
Well,
photos?
no,
No.
we would want someone who knows what they're doing to,
Okay.
to take them, and because you have to plot them on a map and.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I'm happy to talk.
putting together. So other people are essentially putting together this baseline doc. It was on your timeline, Liz. And it's the next thing that was sort of noted on the timeline, which is why I'm wondering what our actionable or deliverable is for.
I think it's not, I don't think you're putting together this report. You might be interested in it. You might have input to certain pieces of it, but I don't think it's really part of your task force.
Okay.
Different from the master plan report, which you do have an opportunity to actively be involved and steer with that landscape architect. So that one is the deliverable of the group.
Okay. And when is that due? Just because I don't have the timeline in front of me.
That's due in the fall, September.
That's the one due in the fall. Okay. All right.
So hold on a second. Carlene, you nominated Krista, but either we have to vote on that.
No.
Or you have to
didn't
withdraw
nominate.
your motion and we can just do it by consensus.
No, I don't think so. I think I just asked that Krista attend that meeting. I don't think there has to be a vote on that. I
Got
should
it.
use the word nominate to make it sound formal.
I was just checking.
I was being cute. Okay, so then we don't really need to talk about the baseline document at all. That's going to sort of exist outside of us. Okay, that's terrific. Okay, and then the other thing that was on your timeline, Liz, that looked like it was pressing, and again, just if this isn't something that we need to be dealing with, tell me. It's next steps for preparation for concepts, including triangle paths, plantings, benches, and wayfinding measures. again, it was the next sort of action item on the timeline. So I didn't know if there was something we had to talk about with that.
I'm sorry, what does it say?
Next steps for preparation of, I'm paraphrasing, but next steps for preparation of concepts, including the triangle, paths, plants, benches, and wayfinding measures.
I mean, I think that those are all the elements of the overall plan.
Okay. So just to get us thinking about what these things are. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can wait for the landscape architect, or you could start to, have some thoughts. I think that already, someone, right, Phil Posner came on the site walk with you all and talked about the triangle. And so already there's some ideas,
Okay.
Want
Well,
to talk about that particular idea now, or table it for later, or what have you? I don't know.
I think all of you were aware that Phil Posner came and he presented a map with the triangle sort of just noted as a possible place for, he called it active recreation. There's something on, I should have it, but I don't.
So in fact, I would then like to know, are we actually limited to passive recreation? Because I believe that appears in some of the language I've seen, but I don't know if it appears in the legal language that, Liz, you're going to look up in your copious free time.
Yeah, it's, they talk about public open space purposes. So,
Okay, so wherever I saw passive recreation, because Phil was specifically talking about active recreation on the triangle, and it's an interesting idea we should discuss, but not if we're not allowed to do it at all.
Yeah, the CHDC would not be interested in pursuing that, I can say, I mean, don't want to really squash any really good ideas, but as the landowner, it brings a level of oversight and management and liability that's kind of beyond what they had in mind.
This is
We've
for a
got
skate
ride
park?
out. Go ahead, Harry.
No, I'm just saying this is for putting a skate park there. So
A
that's what
pump
the land-
park, and a skate park, yeah.
That seems a tough one to put right in front of an old, folks home, but
It's a creative idea. And as Marcia points out, it was sort of conjured, I think, quickly as an alternative to what I think is happening at Junction Park down next to the depot, which has become, I think, a sort of de facto pump park down there. Like people are skateboarding there, and some folks are trying to get those kids off there and put them someplace else nearby. So I think that was the sort of journey it took down the bike path and onto.
hey, we'll put one at the high school. There's one.
Right.
But
And we're gonna have a new middle school, so maybe we can find a spot there to squeeze one in.
Right. Okay. Well, if we're looking at the agenda, then that's really, that was just me gleaning, what looked like possible action items from Liz's helpful timeline, and also just sort of, what's going on with the places, etc. I don't have any other action items on the agenda. So let's talk about what our next steps are. It feels like we're in a little holding pattern because we have to get the landscape architecture firm in before we can do too much work. But does anybody have ideas of what we could be doing in the interim, or should we just hang tight and wait for that?
Let me just read you the little bit in the deed from the DOC to the CHDC regarding that. No improvements or landscaping shall be located such that a shadow will fall on the DOC's solar panels located on the adjacent land, as such panels are shown on the plan. So I think that that's it. So the grantee, that would be the CHDC, is responsible for tree trimming from time to time as necessary to comply with the foregoing. So that's really all it says in terms of specifics from the DOC. There may have been more to that in conversations, but that's the language that ended up in the deed. So, and that translates exactly to what Marcia was saying, translate to some height you know, because I don't really know exactly where the solar panels are relative to where the sun is, and, you know, like, what does that really mean? But anyway, that's the language I can find right here.
That'll be important to talk about with the landscape architect, because they can do like shadow studies and
Right.
figure out exactly how tall they can go and how far away from the panels it would have to be. Well,
So
one thing-
would that relate to like tree plantings in terms of what you're thinking about?
well, yeah, like I think if, you know, if people wanted trees there, we might have to think about species, you know, understory species that didn't get quite as tall, or just think about setting them further
Yeah.
back from the solar panels. But
Mhm.
that's where
But the solar panels really aren't near the property that the portion of the property we're talking about, are they, Krista? They're way, way off.
yeah, it's a good question. I don't have a good enough sense of the.
Well, early morning or late afternoon sun can throw very long shadows. And when they said such that no shadow shall fall, you know, if it's 8 a.m., it's not like they're getting much solar power anyway from that long, low sun, but they
Okay.
might say they don't care. No shadow period ever.
Right. Mhm.
I
Anyway,
thought-
so I just wanted to share that.
Okay, thank you. Krista, you were gonna say something?
Oh, just, you know, something we could all be doing in the meantime is kind of noting as we're out and about other features in other places that we like. And I don't know, like, are we allowed to create like a repository of images that
Why not?
like
I
a
mean-
Google Drive where we can just kind of drop, like if you're out and you see something that you like take a picture of it and throw it in the Google Drive.
Wouldn't we have to like deliver it to the town to be put on our website?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
that would be the preferable way to go.
Okay.
But that way, many people can then weigh in, and we could even use those if we want to do some kind of survey or solicit responses to, you know, we're thinking of these kinds of images. Are you favorable, you know, not favorable, hate it, love it, whatever. We can do that kind of thing, and we've done that for other projects. That's just as ideas.
So no on the Google Drive, just shared among us where we're collecting interesting pictures. No on that.
Well,
Correct.
Okay.
but we don't share it amongst ourselves because that's a form of deliberation. We send it to Marcia.
Yes, to me.
Yes.
And then you create some space, more work for you, Marcia, yay, but you create some space on the website that allows you put some heading in there and say, you know, and then there's just points of interest sort of.
Yeah, what we can do is on your page, there's a column on the left, and that can take you to, you know, images that you're thinking about or favorite things, favorite places, and just create this series of pictures that might be what you need.
Welcome, Peter.
Yeah, sorry I'm late. Got caught in a meeting.
No problem. We're really just been going over logistics and trying to get our heads on straight about what we are supposed to be talking about and what is outside our purview. So you really haven't missed anything. We're just talking about next steps now as we wait for the landscape architect firms to respond to the RFQ.
Okay.
Okay, I guess eventually what we'll be doing is we'll maybe divvy up among the committee, maybe almost like liaison, like I know Harry's very interested in the historical or some of the historical aspects of that spot. So we don't have to do that necessarily now, but is that good thinking that eventually we'll sort of divvy up what sort of outreach we're going to be doing with these various groups, whether it's the pollinator native plant constituency and the historical, like Fowler Library Historical Commission constituency. Does that make sense, folks?
Yeah, I mean, you could start to put together like the elements of the history for the parcel that you want to include, you know, in reference to like, okay, here's where you would get more information, but to start to gather that for all of these areas, right? Like gather what it is that you want to do with the pollinators, what is it that you want to do? Like some statements of of not purpose, but statements of intent in your design for the different aspects that the features that you are looking for, to start to put some words there.
To give to the landscape architecture firm.
Yeah. You know, like get some thoughts that, you know, like I mean, I always think that pen to paper is kind of good, right? Like that you just start and especially for history, if you wanted to get some history pieces in there, that's good to start to some, you know, gather that in paper.
So
Eric,
how does
what do
that
you
work?
think?
Is it just like just write something up, like an idea, like this is a idea of like of historical nature, and submit that, or how does the type work? I know you're saying you couldn't like take photos and pass those around. Those would go to Marsh
No,
Island.
but you can submit it as accompanying documents for a meeting.
Right.
And then it will be part of our official documentation and it'll all be copacetic.
Okay, cool.
Right. Yeah, just even notes about what the history is. So the site was in Marcia, it has some great history and some, you know, point to some resources and, you know, start to gather what that is.
Should I invite David Wood from the Concord Museum for their next meeting in April?
That would be
Talk
wonderful.
To talk a little bit about the long ago history, not the more recent history of that site,
I love that idea.
before it was a reformatory site.
Marcia, invite, what was that name?
David Wood.
Thank you.
He is the curator at the Concord Museum.
And I wonder if there's anybody from Mesquitequid that could talk to the even earlier history of the site, because there could be some archaeological significance, being that it's, you know, on kind of a bluff above the river.
Oh. When you say someone from Mesquitequid, I don't exactly know what that means, Krista.
That I think there are people involved with Mesquitequid that are like more tuned into sort of the Native American history of the area.
That would have been Jimmy Two Feathers and his wife Morwen, but Morwen has passed.
Right.
And I
Oh,
know
sorry to
Jimmy
hear
is
that.
in declining health. I don't know where he is, you know, how he's doing now.
Well,
He did
Jimmy and I
research.
were supposed to meet up like 2 months ago just to say hi, but it was the middle of winter and the virus was completely out of control. I could see if he has any interest or ideas.
Okay.
And I can also check with Shirley Blanky, who did the archaeological study for the town of Concord, and see if there's anything there.
Okay, great.
And again, hold on, who was that?
Shirley Blanky, Blancké. She is an archaeologist who lives in town. And she did, there was an initial study done and she took that information. She has been working with all of the artifacts that have been discovered over time at the Concord Museum and categorizing them. So she may have some additional information.
Harry, who do you think we would speak to? You knew of some specific former residents of the prison, et cetera, that you found, you had mentioned Malcolm X, et cetera. Who would you contact?
I mean, I don't know. I've just been, I'm reading a book on it now, on him now, and Mother Teresa also visited there. There's been some other notables of there. Yeah, that's all. I don't know of any other resource. I was thinking though of reaching out potentially to someone just that sort of represents the, you know, people of color who are part of the population of West Concord, and they are part of Concord MCI. They're part of the census of the town.
Right.
And you know, that there could be a representative there to have some sort of, you know, if we can put something historical in there, that there's a representation there of that.
I agree with you, and I think that's a good idea. So maybe you can sort of do a little.
Yeah, I think I could write something up, and I was thinking of reaching out to some people to see too if they have an interest in this angle on that property, and that if there was, you know, if we were able to put a plaque of some sort, you know, that there was something that would be appropriate to represent the people who do live in that part of West Concord.
Right.
And they're historical too. Yeah, one of the most notably that Malcolm X was beginning of his conversion to Islam started at that point.
In that facility?
Yes. Yep.
Yes, that's not insignificant.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we have some tasks with that.
Now, Krista, was it you who had connections with pollinator people?
Yeah.
Okay, because I have a cousin who lives in New Hampshire who runs Pollinator Pathways program there. And when I told her about this, she practically crushed me in her eagerness to force me to do a pollinator thing. But, you know, I have no personal expertise. And if you know people, there's no need to drag my distant cousin into things.
Well, I would say if she wants to come down and lend a hand.
Well, she might, you never know.
Yeah, well, let me see what I find out with the local groups and you know, sometimes it's the more the merrier with these kinds of things.
You know, oh, go ahead, sorry.
Natural resources as well, because they've sort of sparked a number of pollinator gardens around municipal properties.
Do you think it might be fun at our next meeting, so the April meeting, to invite a few of these historian types to come and then almost just publicize the meeting as just to hear some history, you know, to hear the history of this place, but also as a way to sort of couple the launching of the public launching of our group. So see if David Wood could come and see if someone, you know, maybe it's Jimmy Two Feathers, maybe it's Shirley Blanky, but a couple of others who could come and we could sort of give them some space to talk about the history of that group, just so we can all get our heads on straight, but advertise it as such a little bit. You think that would be fun?
I kind of like
Yeah.
the idea of having different meetings have a different focus, like concentrate on history at one, pollinators at another, something else. Not to mean that it has to be 100% that, just
Yeah.
yeah.
But I was thinking just the history part there. I think people would be very interested in that. Around here, people love that. And we could sort of cluster that group there. What do you think, folks?
Yeah, definitely. That
Because
sounds
by April, we'll probably have chosen our landscape architect, but so it would be good to start to get this stuff on the record and start to funnel that to them. But I don't know if there'd be much work to do yet. Right, Liz? Because they wouldn't have.
I think that they would be in information gathering mode on,
Yeah.
you know, like in fast time, right? Like, because
Right.
the idea was to have a public session in June with 3 concepts.
Okay.
Okay, so here we are, like almost April 1st. So you have 2 months to kind of get concepts together. Now that's just a lot of work. So each meeting, I think you really want to focus exactly as you're talking about on the history and have the person there so they can be hearing that and then absorbing that
Okay.
into the design
Okay.
concepts for you.
I think that would be a lot of fun, but it hinges a little bit on getting David Wood. So fingers crossed for David Wood in April.
I'll send an email tonight.
All right. And then,
Let's say if you had 2 meetings really before June, right? I mean, that's kind of what you have is April and May, and then maybe June's unrealistic. I don't know, but just trying to orient towards the funding requirement, right? The funding deadline is really like in the fall. It doesn't have to be exact, but like something.
Well, the goal is to have enough information so that we can put an application in for the Community Preservation Committee in September. And that's usually the end of September. Working backward, we were looking at the June meeting, the June presentation of the 3 different concepts. Is that here's what we're thinking, here are some ideas, what have we missed, what are we overlooking, and getting input from the public. And then later in the fall, once you have selected the direction you want to go, doing a follow-up with the public to say, this is where we're headed, and these are the things that we're planning to do. And just to make sure that there are no last minute alarms or concerns, but just to keep people apprised of what's being discussed. So so those are the two public forums. One is input, one is here's where we are kinds of things. And looking at timing, it's ideal if we could meet before end of June with the public so that we don't get the criticism, oh, everybody's on vacation in July and August.
Okay.
So that's
And then
the
you have the
reason.
summer to really drill down with the, you know,
Right.
with the materials, and are the paths paved, and are the this and the beds raised, or I don't even know, whatever all those details are that really give it the plan that you can really then go forward with to estimate and to, you know, like that detailed design.
Is it premature to set that June meeting now, just so that we have something to shoot for, or is that premature to set it for?
I guess I would get the landscape architect on board first,
Okay, all right, so it looks like
but
the
that's
action
just me. I don't know. you know.
That's fine. So it looks like what's going to be happening in this little block of time is I'm going to write that letter, send it to you all. You'll wordsmith it as what you want, send it back individually to me, not reply all. And we'll get that out. So we'll do that introduction. We're
Oh,
all,
hold on a second. I'm interrupting, I know. Sorry, Carlene, but Peter missed the part where we were all brainstorming about what landscape architects we know. Peter, know anybody?
Peter, are you there?
I can follow up with Peter.
Okay.
Sure, just in case. I mean, I know we have enough, but we need to get 3 quotes, and some of them might say they're not interested.
Right.
That's as good as a quote.
Oh,
Oh.
is it? Oh,
Excellent.
sweet.
The next thing that's going to happen, it doesn't really have anything to do with us except for our recruiting people, but the next thing that's going to happen also is we'll probably choose our architecture firm in the coming weeks. And then the third thing is we're going to recruit a couple of historians to come for the April meeting so that they can, and then we'll publicize this meeting as an opportunity for people to hear about the history of this very important piece of this parcel of land, but also to advertise what we're doing, who we are, what our plans are, these sorts of things. So these are the 3 sort of things that are crackling that I see from our meeting today. Did I miss anything?
No, but
No.
I have a question about sort of the process of selecting the landscape architect. So who do we do that?
That's a good question. I think that, what did we say? I think we said that there would be one person, and I think I would look to Carlene and Peter Lowood from the CHDC to meet and with Marcia and review the proposals and make a recommendation to the CHDC.
I'm happy to do that. Krista, do you want to stand in for me for that? Only because you have much more experience with that, but I'm very happy to do it.
I think just time-wise.
I get it. So that's
Yeah,
fine.
thanks.
No
I
worries.
was also thinking if Natalie were to submit a bid, it might, like, I
Conflict.
might not.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, because I don't really know. I only know Brooke professionally from working with her on the planning board. Okay. All right. So does anybody else, anybody have any questions or concerns? Anything that's lingering from anything we talked about? No? All
You know,
right.
I would just go, if I could, just to offer some ideas, you know, you know, so for the 2 meetings that you have, like one will be around history, and maybe it's not going to be the next one, depending on the people you want to have come. But also the planning, you know, public input study that was done back in 2016, something, and you've been on the site walk.
Mhm.
Maybe just come with what you think are good ideas to include in the recreation, like, you know, what kind of, any access to the river or this or that. I mean, there are a lot of like ideas out there, and it's really kind of a process of narrowing them down to like, those were really good ideas, but here's where we really are. Like, we're going to have, you know, like some benches, and we're going to do some walking, and we're going to do this, or, you know, but really come with maybe your top ideas of what you want included in the plan.
To give to the architect, to present as.
Yeah,
some-
to kind of
as
incorporate in the
concept.
designs. Yeah, incorporate in the designs. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in that. I don't really mean to say it that way, but there's a lot of ideas in that planning document. And at some point, it's the more, it's a tight time frame. So the more specific direction that you can provide, the better turnaround you're going to get.
And when do you see that delivery formally happening? At the April meeting or? What,
Well, I think you could talk, like you committee folks could just have a discussion of each person can offer their ideas.
at
yeah.
the April meeting?
Yeah,
Okay,
Well, what I would suggest actually is that anyone who can manage it, write up their ideas in advance. And does Carleen collect them, Marcia, or do we send them directly to you and then they can be included as supplemental documentation to our meeting? That way we can all read over each other's ideas in advance.
I'm not sure I would want to have an idea that's just a wisp of a concept as a formal document that I send to Marcia that ends up on a website. I would rather just propose that in the meeting, just,
Okay,
Just come with the ideas and
Yeah.
then, and you can write them down and then submit them after you've, explored all the different things. But I think that Carleen is right.
I don't know, just to start to narrow the field, get your scope down, bubble up to the top with what you think.
and see if we're on sort of in the same universe for the sorts
Yeah.
of things we're thinking about. I mean, Sue wants to put a pony pull and a and a Ferris wheel there, then
Right.
we've got to
I think
talk
that's
about it.
passive rec. Well, you only just sit on the Ferris wheel.
I think that's a good idea, Liz. I've just started to scribble down my list already and I've got 5 things right here. So this is not going to be difficult.
Yeah.
Okay. It is my burning desire to get us out of here within an hour. So 3 minutes left. Does anybody have anything else they want to add to our discussion?
Is there a historian of the Concord prison or, the prison system or something along those lines? That might make an interesting discussion of the history of the site. Different prison movements that roll through time, and they've all pretty much taken place in Concord.
I think that there is a wealth of information at the Concord Free Public Library in their special collections. I've used that as a resource. I know Harry is looking into some things, and I can reach out to my contact at DOC to see if there's anyone. I also am aware that there is a doctor who has been working at the prison who is interested in somehow acknowledging the prison cemetery that's over across the street. And her idea was to lay some bricks along the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. We're now talking with her about perhaps putting the bricks in between the existing rails that used to go off into the prison that delivered goods and took out materials for sale in other parts of the Commonwealth. And so there's been a lot of research that's been done for the Bruce Freeman that I think would be useful.
Sounds great.
She sounds like a really interesting person, Marcia, that doctor. Is she an historian as well? Sort of an amateur? No.
I think it's just something she's interested in doing.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who have a lot of interest in acknowledging all that's been done at that prison.
Right. So Peter, to just address you directly, that's exactly what we're going to be looking for the April meeting, assuming that the April meeting can be sort of our history lesson of the area. One of the sort of pillars of what we were planning on doing for that meeting is talking about the history of the prison. So exactly what you're asking for is what we're hoping to do.
That's great. Thank
Good.
you.
Okay.
Miss, did we say we were going to try to get that doctor to invite them to attend the next meeting?
We didn't say that.
Okay,
I think we're just going to collect more information about what she is doing and what she hopes
Sure.
to do, and so we just understand the landscape.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, folks, if that's it, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn the meeting.
And a
Second.
second.
But before everybody disappears, let me remind you, if you haven't voted, vote.
Yeah, do we need to do a roll call for a motion to adjourn, Liz, as well? Okay, so, so Krista seconded, so motion to adjourn. I, Carleen Hempel, aye.
Mr.
Tom
Collins, aye.
Hartman, aye.
Harry Bartlett, hi.
Sue Belcher, aye.
That was unanimous. Okay, folks, thank you so much. You'll hear from me via email over the weekend.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.